All right, we're going to go over solving problems using trig. This is a very long problem here. We're going to read through it once, and then we're going to highlight important information the second time we read through it. So, 3 people named Hi, Bai, and Rai live in 2 identical apartment buildings located 30 meters from each other. Hi lives 2 floors above Bai. Bai lives 4 floors above Rai. Rai and Hi live in the same apartment building, while Bai lives in the apartment building across the street. There is an angle of 36 degrees of separation when Bai looks across the street to Hi and Rai's apartment buildings. How far apart are Hi and Rai's apartments? Okay, very confusing, especially with the rhyming names. Let's try to pick out what we think may be important information and build a model from that. We know we have 3 people, Hi, Bai, and Rai, and there are 2 identical apartment buildings.
In the diagram it says one's taller, it looks like one's taller than the other.
Don't worry about it. Located 30 meters from each other. Hi lives 2 floors above Bai, so that's a very important sentence. And Bai lives 4 floors above Rai. Rai and Hi are in the same building, and Bai lives across the street. There's an angle of 36 degrees of separation when Bai looks across the street to Hi and Rai's apartments. How far apart are Hi and Rai? Again, very tricky. Let's try to build our 2 apartments. We know they're identical to each other. Okay? Let's talk about who lives in which apartment building. So, Hi, Bai, and Rai, we know that Rai and Hi live in the same building. So let's say this is... Oh, geez. This is going to be Hi. We'll use H for Hi and R for Rai. They live in that building, which means Bai lives in this building.
Sorry for the interruption.
We also know that Hi lives 2 floors above Bai. So this guy, Hi, lives 2 floors up from Bai. So let's just say Bai lives on this floor here. We know that Hi is, so if this is a floor, 2 floors above him. Here's Hi. We also know Bai lives, this is what I'm looking. Bai lives 4 floors above Rai. Okay, in other words, Rai is 4 below him. So if this is the floor, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where Rai lives. They also said there's an angle of separation when Bai is looking at both of their houses of 36 degrees. Okay, so we know that this will be 36 degrees. And at the very beginning of the question, they said the buildings are 30 meters from each other. So we know from here to here is going to be 30 meters. Okay? So here's all our information. Let's zoom in and see if we can make sense of this. So here's our diagram. Okay? Now, what we are going to do is we're going to split this triangle we have here, this acute triangle. We're going to split it into 2 right-angle triangles. Okay? The reason we're going to do that is because we actually know the distance from here to here, it's 30 meters. So we're going to draw a line across, cutting it down, not the middle because they're not identical how far apart they live from each other. Okay? Now, we do know that Hi is 2 floors up, and we know Rai is 4 floors down. A total of how many floors between the 2 of them? 6. There's a total of 6 floors between the 2 of these guys. Okay? And these 6, this 6 is divided into a 2 plus a 4. Okay? That equals a total of 6 floors. Well, this angle needs to be split like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how to separate this angle. We're going to say let x equal the height of 1 floor. So x is a floor, just 1 floor. So in other words, being 2 floors up, you're 2x above where Bai lives. Being 4 floors below, you are 4x below that. And we know that the entire angle that encompasses both of these floors is 2x plus 4x. In other words, it's a 6x in terms of the separation. We don't know how high each floor is in this case. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that 36 And we know we need to separate it into, for High's apartment building, 2x plus 4x, which is Rye's apartment building. We're going to split it into angles. So we're going to split the angle that refers from Bi to Rye, and we're going to split it into the angle that refers from Bi to High. Now I can figure out how much of each how much each floor represents as an angle. So we're going to add these two together. 2x and 4x is 6x. Is equal to 36 degrees. So we're going to figure out how much of a degree each floor represents. In other words, every time he looks up to a floor, what's that degree? Because that degree will just double or triple every time we go higher or lower. Okay? So what we're going to do here is I'm going to divide by 6 to get x by itself. And x is equal to how many degrees? 6. So each floor when he's looking represents 6 degrees. Which means if high is 2x, how many degrees do we associate with high? That's right, we do 2, we sub in 6, we get 12 degrees. So in other words, this angle here represents a 12-degree incline. Okay, that's your angle of elevation there. If that's the case, Rye's apartment building, we plug in 6 for x there. 4 times 6 gives us what?
24.
So 24 degrees. So in other words, 24 degrees represents the angle of depression from Bi to Rye's house. Well, let's make sure these make sense. What is 12 plus 24? 36, right? And we know that because this is 2 floors and this is 4 floors, this number has to be double this. Is that true? If I take 12 and multiply by 2, do I get 24? Right, so I've split this up properly. So now that I've split this properly, I've made 2 triangles. Okay? And I'm going to recreate them on the side just so we can make sense of them, and we'll separate it a little. Yeah, well, now we're solving for the sides because we want to know how far apart High and Rye are. Okay, so we're going to split this as if it's 2 triangles, even though I know they relate to each other as one. They're both 30 along here. Okay, so both of these is 30. This one is 12. This one is 24 degrees. Okay, we actually have to figure out the entire distance from Rye to High. We want to know how far apart they live from each other. So in other words, this is our x. We got to figure out this distance here. That would be this part of the triangle, so we'll highlight that in yellow. And we'll call this y. We need to figure out that distance there. I'm going to fix this. We'll highlight that in green. That's this part of the triangle. Together, it's going to give us the entire distance between the 2 houses. Okay? So what we need to do is figure out which ratio I need to use. Now, these are right-angled triangles. Do I need to use sine or cosine law? I don't need to. Can I? I can, but it's a lot more work. So we don't need to do that right now. And actually, I only have 2 pieces of information, really. Oh, I have 3. I have the other angle. So we want to use our primary trig ratio. So let's think back to chapter 7. If I have this angle here, and the opposite side, and the adjacent side, what am I looking for? Well, yes, we're looking for x, but what ratio do we use? That's right. Tangent 12 degrees is equal to the opposite being x over the adjacent, which is 30. Okay? That's for the top triangle. We'll quickly isolate this. I'm going to bring this over. The other triangle, I'm looking for the opposite side, and I have the adjacent. What do I use? Which ratio? Same one, tan. Tan 24 is equal to the opposite, which is y, over the adjacent, which is 30. So these are almost identical in terms of solving. I bring the 30 over on this side, or sorry, on both sides, so we have 30 multiplied by tangent 12 is equal to x. 30 multiplied by tangent 24 is equal to y. Who wants to help me out here?
Sure.
Get a calculator there and try that. Okay. So for x, we got 6.37. Anyone get y? 13.3, yeah, it makes sense. That's probably twice as big. Let's just double check to make sure these are twice as big as each other, right? Because we know one guy's 2 floors and one's the other. 6.37 times 2. 12.4. Oh, we're a little off. Probably a bit of rounding here. Let's add the two of these together. X plus Y, because we know that that's what everything's going to be in terms of the total height between the two buildings, okay? So we'll call our answer between high and rise. So HR, between high and rise building, is equal to 6.37 plus 13.3. Distance between the two is what? Yeah, and that's correct. That is the answer at the end of this. Okay. So, by far and away the hardest part of this, had they not given us a diagram, would have been to create it. Then once we had the diagram, we had to be a little intuitive in how we were going to split up that angle. Okay, we had to think back to some simpler math, more like grade 6 stuff in terms of separating ratios. Okay.